Detroit, Michigan, 1979. Bob Marley was in the middle of war when a white man in a Confederate flag jacket jumped the barrier and rushed the stage. Security moved immediately, but Bob did something nobody expected. He held up his hand and said 5 words that stopped everyone cold. No. Let him come up. If you love discovering the untold stories behind music's most incredible moments, hit that subscribe button. The man's name was Dale Hoskins. He was 32 years old, a factory worker from Warren, and he'd spent the last 3 weeks planning this moment. Dale wasn't there to listen to music. He was there to make a statement, to show everyone that Bob Marley, this black man preaching unity and love, didn't belong on American stages. Dale had brought friends, 7 of them scattered throughout the Cobo Hall arena. They had signs ready, Confederate flags hidden under jackets, and a plan to storm the stage during the concert's peak moment. They wanted chaos. They wanted headlines. They wanted to prove that not everyone was buying what Bob Marley was selling. But when Dale climbed onto that stage, when he stood face to face with Bob Marley in front of 11,000 people, something happened that nobody, especially not Dale, saw coming. The night started hours earlier. Dale sat in his truck in the Cobo Hall parking lot, watching thousands of people stream into the arena. Black people, white people, Hispanics, Asians, all moving together toward the entrance. The sight made his blood boil. This is what's wrong with America, Dale thought. No boundaries, no order, no respect for the way things should be. Dale's father had raised him on clear principles. People should stick with their own kind. Mixing races led to destruction. And music like Bob Marley's, music that celebrated unity across color lines, was dangerous. It was poisoning young white minds, making them forget where they came from, making them think everyone was equal. Dale's group leader, a man named Kenneth who ran a white nationalist organization in suburban Detroit, had been clear. You want to make a real impact? Disrupt their false prophets. Show them their unity is a lie. Bob Marley was the perfect target, famous enough to get media attention, bold enough in his message to deserve confrontation. So Dale bought a ticket, 3rd row, center, close enough to jump the barrier when the moment came. He wore his Confederate flag jacket proudly. Let them see it. Let them know exactly who I am and what I represent. But there was something Dale hadn't anticipated. To get that close, he had to arrive early, which meant sitting surrounded by Bob Marley fans for 90 minutes before the show. And despite every belief Dale held, despite the walls he'd built in his mind, he couldn't help but notice something unsettling. These people were happy. Genuinely, peacefully happy. The black family to his left was talking about Bob's message of freedom. The white couple to his right held hands, excited for the show. Behind him, a mixed-race group of college students shared stories about what Bob's music meant to them. Dale tried to hold on to his anger, tried to remember his mission. But sitting there in that sea of anticipation, something inside him wavered. At 8:30 p.m., the lights went down, the crowd erupted. Bob Marley walked onto that stage. Dale had seen photos, but seeing Bob in person was different. He radiated something, not just charisma, something deeper, peace, power, purpose. Bob opened with natural mystic, and the arena transformed. 11,000 people moved as one, sang as one, breathed as one. Dale stayed seated, arms crossed, jaw clenched. This is the enemy. This is what I'm here to stop. But then Bob started speaking between songs. I want to tell you something, Bob said, his voice carrying through the arena. The people who profit from division, they want you to believe we are enemies, black and white, rich and poor. They want us fighting each other so we don't see who's really controlling things. The crowd listened, silent. But I'm here to tell you the truth, Bob continued. We are one people, one love, one heart. And when we recognize that, we become unstoppable. Dale felt something uncomfortable stirring inside him. Doubt. Bob began playing War, his adaptation of Haile Selassie's speech to the United Nations. The lyrics hit Dale like physical blows. Until the philosophy which holds one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, everywhere is war. Dale's hands, gripping his knees in anger, slowly loosened. Until there are no longer first-class and second-class citizens of any nation, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, me say war. Dale looked around. The black family beside him, the white couple, the mixed group of students. They were all singing these words together. Not as separate groups, as one voice. For the first time in his adult life, Dale Mitchell felt something that terrified him. He felt wrong. But Dale wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. He'd come here with a mission. His friends were counting on him. During Exodus, Dale made his move. He stood up, pushed past the people in his row, jumped the barrier, and rushed the stage. Security guards converged immediately from both sides. The crowd gasped. The music stuttered but didn't stop. Dale was fast. He made it to the stage edge, started climbing up. 2 security guards grabbed his legs. 1 grabbed his jacket. Dale was screaming, "You don't belong here! Go back to Jamaica! This is our country!" But Bob Marley did something that froze everyone in place. He walked to the edge of the stage, looked directly at the security guards, and held up his hand. "No," Bob said firmly. "Let him come up." The security guards looked confused. "Bob, this guy is—" "I said let him come up." The guards released Dale. The entire arena went silent. 11,000 people held their breath. Dale, now free, climbed onto the stage. He stood there facing Bob Marley, breathing hard, his Confederate flag jacket visible to everyone. Bob's band had stopped playing. The silence was deafening. Dale pointed at Bob, his finger shaking with rage. "You're destroying this country," Dale shouted. "You're teaching our kids to forget who they are. You're spreading poison." Bob didn't step back, didn't flinch. He just looked at Dale with eyes that seemed to see everything. "What's your name, brother?" Bob asked quietly. "I'm not your brother," Dale spat. "My name is Dale Hoskins, and I came here to tell you that not everyone believes your lies." "What lies are those?" Bob asked, his voice still calm. "That we're all equal, that race doesn't matter, that we should all just mix together and forget our heritage." Dale was shaking now, adrenaline and anger coursing through him. Bob nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something, Dale?" Dale didn't answer, just stood there, fists clenched. "Why does my message scare you so much?" "It doesn't scare me," Dale shouted. "It disgusts me." "Then why are you shaking?" Bob asked gently. Dale looked down at his hands. They were trembling. "Because I'm angry," Dale said. "Why are you angry?" Because you're wrong. Because everything you stand for is wrong." Bob took a step closer. The crowd watched, mesmerized. "Dale, I don't think you're angry because I'm wrong. I think you're angry because you're afraid I might be right." Dale's jaw clenched. "I'm not afraid of anything." "Everyone's afraid of something," Bob said. "I'm afraid sometimes too. But you know what I learned? Fear only has power when we don't face it." Bob turned to the crowd. "How many people here came tonight afraid of something? Afraid of being judged? Afraid of not belonging? Afraid of showing who they really are?" Thousands of hands went up. Bob turned back to Dale. "See? We all carry fear. The question is, do we let that fear make us hate, or do we let it teach us compassion?" Dale's eyes were wet. He was fighting back tears in front of 11,000 people. "You don't understand," Dale said, his voice breaking. "I was raised. My father taught me." "Your father taught you what he learned," Bob said. "And his father taught him. But you're not your father, Dale. You're you. And right now, you have a choice." Bob gestured to the crowd. "Look at them. Really look." Dale turned. 11,000 faces looked back at him. Black, white, brown, yellow. Young, old, rich, poor, all watching, all waiting. Do they look like enemies to you? Bob asked. Dale's vision blurred. The tears came. He couldn't stop them. I don't know, Dale whispered. I don't know anymore. Bob put his hand on Dale's shoulder. The crowd gasped. That's okay, Bob said. Not knowing is the beginning of wisdom, because when you think you know everything, you stop learning. You stop growing. You stop seeing. Dale broke down completely, right there on stage, in front of everyone, in his Confederate flag jacket. Dale Hoskins wept. Bob pulled him into an embrace. The crowd erupted in applause and tears. Bob held Dale for a long moment, then pulled back and looked into his eyes. Dale, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Dale nodded, unable to speak. Have I hurt you tonight? Bob asked. Dale shook his head. Has anyone in this arena hurt you? Dale shook his head again. Then why did you come here to hurt us? Bob asked, not accusingly, but genuinely curious. Because, Dale's voice cracked, because I thought you were the enemy? And now? Now I don't know what to think. Bob smiled. Good. That's honest. That's real. Bob turned to his band. Let's play something for Dale. Bob started playing One Love, but he wasn't singing to the crowd. He was singing to Dale. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. Dale stood there, tears streaming down his face, listening to Bob Marley sing directly to him. The crowd joined in, their voices creating a wave of sound that washed over everything. When the song ended, Bob asked Dale, Do you want to stay up here or go back to your seat? I don't know, Dale said honestly. Can I just sit here? Of course, brother. Dale sat down at the side of the stage. Bob continued the concert. For the next hour, Dale sat there watching Bob perform, watching the crowd unite in music, watching everything he thought he knew crumble and reshape into something he didn't understand yet, but could feel was true. After the concert, Bob invited Dale backstage. They talked for 2 hours. Bob didn't lecture. He didn't judge. He just shared his story, his philosophy, his understanding of the world. Dale listened. Really listened. For the first time in his life, Dale heard perspectives that contradicted everything he'd been taught, and instead of rejecting them, he considered them. Before Dale left that night, Bob gave him something. A copy of his album Exodus with a note written inside. Dale, the journey from hate to love is the hardest one we make, but it's the only one worth taking. You started that journey tonight. Keep walking. One love, Bob. Dale walked out of Cobo Hall at 2 a.m. His friends from the nationalist group had waited for him in the parking lot. What happened? Why didn't you give the signal? One asked. Dale looked at them. These men he'd called brothers. These men who'd reinforced his hatred for so long. I can't do this anymore, Dale said quietly. Can't do what? This. The hate. The anger. I can't carry it anymore. They called him a traitor. They cut him off completely. Dale drove home alone that night and threw away everything. His Confederate memorabilia, his nationalist literature, every symbol of the life he'd been living. The next week, Dale showed up at a black church in Detroit. He didn't know what he was looking for. Forgiveness, maybe. Understanding. He just knew he couldn't go back to who he'd been. The pastor, Reverend James Williams, listened to Dale's story. When Dale finished, Reverend Williams said, Son, redemption isn't earned, it's accepted. Bob Marley showed you grace when you came with hate. Now you have to learn to show yourself that same grace. Dale started attending that church, started volunteering in the community, started slowly and painfully dismantling every racist belief he'd built his identity on. 3 months after the concert, Dale wrote Bob a letter. He explained what had happened after that night, how his life had changed, how he'd lost friends but gained something more valuable. Truth. Dale never knew if Bob read the letter. Bob was already sick with cancer. Within 2 years, Bob would be gone. But Dale carried Bob's message forward. By 1985, Dale was working with at-risk youth, specifically targeting kids in hate groups, trying to pull them out the way he'd been pulled out. By 1990, Dale was speaking at schools and prisons, telling his story, using his past as a cautionary tale, and his transformation as proof that change is possible. Today, Dale Hoskins is 77 years old. He runs a reconciliation center in Detroit called One Love Recovery, dedicated to helping people leave extremist groups. On his office wall hangs that album cover Bob gave him, with Bob's handwritten note. And every year, on the anniversary of that concert, Dale returns to Cobo Hall and tells his story to anyone who will listen. People ask me what Bob Marley did that night, Dale says. They want to know what magic words he used, what technique convinced me to change. But the truth is simpler and more powerful than that. Bob looked at me, a man who came to hurt him, who climbed on his stage with hate in my heart, and he chose love. He didn't see an enemy, he saw a hurting person, and when someone sees your pain instead of your anger, it changes everything. Bob Marley died in 1981, but his message, the message Dale tried to silence, continues through people like Dale, people who were transformed by encountering love when they came with hate. And sometimes, late at night, Dale still plays that Exodus album. He closes his eyes, and he's back on that stage, face to face with a man who refused to hate him back. A man who saw past the Confederate jacket, past the anger, past the hate, and found a brother worth saving.